From Azeroth and Tamriel to galaxies beyond the Milky Way, virtual worlds have been a home to millions and millions of players. Some of them you would venture in alone, and in others you made acquaintances along the way. But all of them were gateways, safe havens. A place where it didn't matter where you came from or who you are outside of them. They were an escape. To many gamers, the magic of those worlds is to reel you in, to immerse you in their fantasy. In order to immerse you, they need you to believe that what you're seeing is real. And so we create worlds that are different in just the right way, but similar enough to what we recognize as reality. The events in both Azeroth and Tamriel are driven by conflict, just like real life. Both Azeroth and Tamriel are home to many different cultures and customs, just like our own planet. The one thing that's different is not even the magic or the dragons. Those are just tools to tell a story. What's different is that when you click complete on your character creator, you and every single person that did it are the same. You all start level 1. You're the same Dovahkiin. No one person is better than the other. Games have been called a Great Equaliser for that exact reason. But do they still deserve this title?
Hey, you're finally awake.
Any details you can give us on Battlefield? How big do you think this will be?
Well, I think it's going to be huge.
It is 4 times the size of Fallout 4. It allows us to have 16 times the detail.
And the game award goes to, oh man, I have to pay a microtransaction to unlock.
Ubisoft is prioritizing monetization.
The players at the very bottom who needed the money the most were struggling to make even minimum wage in their country.
So let's do a little bit of time traveling. It's 2008 and Mr. T is making World of Warcraft look good. Thousands of heroes are fighting their way through Northrend in order to confront the Lich King himself. A time that many would describe as peak World of Warcraft. Perhaps this truly was the peak of WoW's game design, but wait, I think there was something else that happened that year. The Great Recession was literally the single greatest financial disaster in almost 100 years. Namely, since the Great Depression had started in 1929. The unemployment rate more than doubled in some countries, including the US, and amongst other things, triggered the Greek government debt crisis. This wasn't a great time to be around, and countless people were faced with very tangible existential fears like being unhoused or not being able to afford medical bills, let alone groceries. Obviously, those fears have been around before the Great Recession, but it's safe to say that it gravely amplified these issues. A group that was hit disproportionately hard were young people aged 16 to 24. On a completely unrelated note, what do you think Blizzard thought was World of Warcraft's target audience during that time?
I'm Mr. T and I'm a Night Elf Mohawk.
Escapism is the tendency to seek distraction and relief from unpleasant realities, especially by seeking entertainment or engaging in fantasy. If 2008 is not a generation that is seeking distraction by engaging in entertainment or fantasy, then what is? We can even see this behavior in a more recent example. During the first year of the pandemic alone, gamers spent 39% more time playing video games. Console sales shot up by 155%, and total video game sales increased by a whopping 63%. You would think that when people are afraid they won't be able to buy toilet paper soon, owning digital assets doing a silly dance might be lower on the priority list. And when we take a look at the fantasy genre itself, we can see its growth reacting to the events going on at the time. Not to quote Wikipedia or anything, but to quote Wikipedia, in Britain, in the aftermath of World War I, a notably large number of fantasy books aimed at an adult readership were published. I wonder what that was about. Electric Literature, a non-profit digital publisher, notes how soon after 1945, quote, fantasy solidified into a publishing category. J.R.R. Tolkien wrote the Lord of the Rings books in stages between 1937 and 1949, which would end up being some of the most influential fantasy novels ever written. That time period sure seems important. It is at this point redundant to say that even fantasy itself has deep ties to tragedies and suffering. Look, I could keep going. The takeaway from all of this is there is clearly a correlation between video game consumption and people not doing great. They escape because reality has dealt them a bad hand. And to you who may feel bad or guilty about doing it, these are the words of a long-dead man on the subject. I've claimed that escape is one of the main functions of fairy stories, and since I do not disapprove of them, it is plain that I do not accept the tone of scorn or pity with which escape is now so often used. Why should a man be scorned if, finding himself in prison, he tries to get out and go home? Or if he cannot do so, he thinks and talks about other topics than jailers and prison walls. So what does this all have to do with the Great Equaliser? Well, how can I put this? As the name Great Equaliser implies, we're in fact not equal. While millions have suffered during a global financial crisis, some with enough cash on hand just kept buying all the stuff from the less fortunate and made billions from it. An estimated 70 to 85 million people died in World War II, but conscription exceptions for the rich were and are still everyday occurrences in one way or another. Isn't it great though that after taxes, American corporations were able to double their profits during World War II? And hey, aren't you glad that the 10 richest men on earth were able to double their wealth during a pandemic? They openly say it too, as if it was something to be proud of. That seems very appropriate. The playing field is not even and never has been. So you're back in 2008. You just lost your first job after uni, had to move back in with your parents and can't find a new occupation. What do? You go back to Azeroth, where all those things don't exist. Where you log in and you're not better or worse than the next guy. You're both level 1. Games have been called the Great Equaliser because advantages that some have in real life meant nothing in the virtual world. People can't judge you for not being able to afford a $100 t-shirt. They aren't gossiping about your disruptive home, and they won't judge you for not being traditionally beautiful, because what they see is what you show them. You could conquer the Lich King, become the Dovahkiin, or any popular game trope that comes to mind. So there you have it. This is what we mean by Great Equaliser. It's a parallel universe with much more equity. Of course, things are still not equal. Some people have more time to play than others, some are better connected, find it easier to get gear after a raid, etc. But your rich friend Billy's net worth doesn't mean anything in 2008 WoW. Unlike in the real world, if you put in the work, you actually have at least somewhat comparable chances. In the opening of this video, I questioned whether the title is still applicable or even deserved for video games today. I would honestly argue that no, with a few exceptions, they don't. Right after abhorrent working conditions, worker exploitation, and harassment of all kinds in the workplace, discourse about game development predominantly revolves around monetization. As more and more interest grows in the market, companies do what companies do best and start to think about how they can extract the maximum amount of money possible out of their customers. This comes in many forms and flavors. Star Wars Battlefront 2, for example, launched with a broken progression and made it nigh impossible to play the strongest characters by obscuring access through a 40-hour grind per character. That's a full work week, mind you. The way out is a quick swipe with your credit card. World of Warcraft itself has since launched its classic service after intense demands from the community, even though they didn't really believe in it.
You think you do, but you don't.
When they released the first expansion, Burning Crusade, they clearly were more serious about the project and released a level boost with it. The boost costs $39.99, so you can either buy that or spend on average 100 hours leveling your character. Think about it. Leveling for 40 cents an hour? You're practically making money swiping. But that's actually better than the current version of WoW, where you can just straight up buy digital currency with real money. Have you not got the latest gear? Just swipe. Oh, what's that? You prefer Korean MMOs? Then you too can become the strongest force in Black Desert Online. All you need to do is spend tens of thousands.
You see my transaction history. I think I'm about at 160k. So like a lot of people think I'm a lot more, and I'm like 160k in on Steam records.
I like how he's rationalizing. He's like, it's only like they think I'm way more. Actually, guys, I've only spent 160,000. It's not that much. Yeah, that's it. That's all.
That's including all the other Steam games too. So I'm not too sure how much exactly maybe. I would say, to be fair, 140, but I don't know.
Hey, do you guys not have phones?
Do you guys not have phones?
Yeah, you guys all have phones, right?
Or better yet, do you not have $100,000 to participate in a competitive player versus player experience? Just swipe, bro. Monetization has been on a relentless march forward. The market, aka consumers like you and I, have done a bad job at rejecting those products, since they are literally the places we flee to in order to escape. Governments are far too slow to adapt. For example, even though there is no ambiguity about the problematic nature of loot boxes, both legally and morally, most countries still wrangle with the problem to this day. They are out of touch, don't understand the problem, or are paid off well enough to stop legislation in parliament. And we can see the change in gaming culture too. There is literally terminology and memes about the buying behavior in video games now, such as the term swiping.
It's so funny for me to see the term, dude. It's like they don't need to swipe. Like there's a term for that shit, bro.
Over time, buying power in video games has become more and more normalized, and the consequences are that the very place we went to in order to escape these things has now just become another storefront. A war is being waged on consumer rights and ethics, and I don't know what to tell you other than we are losing. We are allowing for escape to be just another commodity. So no, games don't deserve the title Great Equaliser anymore. The playing field has been unevened, if you will. Don't get me wrong, there are diamonds in the rough. Say what you will about League of Legends, at least you can't buy power. Even Fortnite does much better than these games. They obviously come with their own host of issues though, which will be well worth exploring in future videos. Yeah, those two are just skin machines now, but that's a lot better than some of the examples we have just heard. A testament to how normalized this is and how low my expectations are nowadays. And we haven't even started to talk about the crypto and metaverse grift. Remember Ubisoft Quartz? We will have to face the fact that even though this has been our getaway, ultimately the structural problems of the outside world have caught up. We cannot escape.